ever started a business because someone told you couldn't? Have you ever inspired an entire movement because a man said you wouldn't be able to? I assume some of the women in this room would have that experience, or at least I was hoping so, because I put in my notes to make sure that I had a plan for when people didn't respond to that, but I didn't actually make one, so you do. Okay, great. I'm here because I have seen how putting people over profit can make Iowa even better, and because I have seen firsthand how turning women's anger into action can change the world. Oh, there, wrong way. Yeah. So, and I'm supposed to be clicking, there we go. So in April 2022, I had pitched and gotten second at a startup tech competition earlier that year. I felt like I was finally going to be the entrepreneur that I aspired to be. All of a sudden, I couldn't shake this feeling that even though I was being accepted in this group, the solution that I was creating wasn't actually going to solve the problems facing rural Iowa. So that month, I started another entrepreneurship class, which is kind of run of the course for women who want to start businesses, to work through my first physical concept of a gift shop. As I got a stronger idea of the concept, the fire inside me grew. The anger became overwhelming, and I did what most angry women do. I called the man in charge of what I was angry about. Now, I will say, just as a caveat for all of you in this room, if you are going to go demanding things get better and organizations do their job, just know that they may not be up to the task. And then also be prepared to be handed the work when you do it better. Within literal minutes of my unglued and angry expectation rant, I had a building for rent offered to me. I'm not advancing slides, or I'm going backwards. There we go. It's actually the building behind me in this picture. See, in rural communities, we suffer from a confusing phenomenon. There are no businesses in the buildings, but they're not actively for rent or sale either. They just sit vacant. And with that space in hand, I committed to changing the world outside my door. And I unknowingly took on the problems facing rural communities because I started somewhat of a movement just by putting potential actions into play. Now, right before signing the lease, like a good entrepreneur, I sought advice from my mentors. I was going to list the actual mail that gave me this advice, but so many of them gave me this advice, I decided to leave it unnamed. And so it sounded like this: brick and mortar is not a smart move, especially in a rural community. Do something safe and small. You're a woman. Do something online that'll make you a lot of money, make it cute, and have fun, right? But that wasn't what I wanted to do, and with that, this quote inspired the movement. There we go. I believe Iowans have a tendency to eat their young. Here I was, a younger female entrepreneur aspiring to open a business that desperately needed the solutions that I wanted to come up with. And everyone, literally every person that I sought advice from, male and female, including some of the state-funded business agencies, said not to do what I wanted to do. Along with the at least one person a week who still wanders into my shop and hopes that my business can survive while waving to me without making a purchase. Now, Iowa has definitely seen a decline in brick and mortars and their quaint main streets. And with that, we really have lost our community. And I have to wonder, did we want this, or is this just something someone out in California or in New York decided, right? Like malls. Iowa needs malls. It's cold. right? We can't be going outside, but someone very far away has made decisions for us. And we have to decide today, is that something that we want, or do we want to fight for the experience that we need here? And we've lived by these old narratives. I know that in the beginning of my story, this was definitely something that had held me back for a very long time. To do anything cool or big, you have to be the one that made it and left. I am here to create a new reality in Iowa. Ooh. One where we're empowered to put people over profit in business. A reality where we create what is needed for our state, not just what's expected or what has always been. And finally, a reality where Iowa becomes a place where people can stay and live their dreams. So I had to start wondering, is it possible? What can be done? I'm opening a brick and mortar, but is that safe? Is that smart? And if I wanted to inspire some sort of organic small town revival, how could I do that? So I started first by asking women entrepreneurs what they wanted for their businesses instead of assuming that their goal was to scale. Imagine. And I will say that I did ask men too, but they were not as quick to move when given opportunities. Imagine again. And with that, I started meeting and being inspired by women. Women like Abby Gellner, who you'll hear on the stage later today. She was running a successful customized craft business out of her home, but she was feeling burnout and uninspired more often than not. One day, when we were sitting in my office, she said, if I could do anything, I'd be a writer. But she couldn't see a direct enough path to that as something that she could pursue. More on that later. Women like Callie McElhenney, who I met at her garage sale, and we figured out that we're like behind the corner neighbors, and she was selling mannequins at her garage sale, and I couldn't help but dig a little bit deeper, because it's kind of what I do. And I found out that she was closing her Etsy store, and she wanted to start a screen printing company in her basement. She planned on it taking a while because she knew that she was wanting to start up in a small community. And she didn't know how she was going to connect all the dots, so she'd kind of get around to building her screen printing company within the next year, she thought. Women like Caitlin Ryerson, who had a very successful mobile grooming salon, but she dreamt of brick and mortar expansion that she was actively advised against. Not safe, not smart. And myself, who had mentor after mentor hand advice against going against the work that was laid on my heart. And unexpectedly, my shop became a connection place for female entrepreneurs in our community. Whew. Amazing. Okay. And that sort of positioned me as a mentor, which I suppose I kind of hoped that I would be. So I knew already within the first 2 years of opening my business that our mentorship was making an impact. But I didn't want to just stand up here and be like, we made such an impact, we're so amazing. So I decided that I would look for actual stats on this phenomenon and not just depend on the story that I'm going to tell you. Back it up with some meaty stats here. So I found a lot of studies, actually. But this was my favorite one because it had really impressive numbers. So women who had a business that were mentored by women mentors averaged $1.6 million in sales more than women mentored by men. So that was a 34% increase in sales compared to the control group, which is pretty freaking impressive and not surprising at all, right? So after finding these stats, I really felt like, well, I mentored, but I wasn't like sitting in a room mentoring. I was just asking these women questions. I was doing something a little bit differently than what I had experienced in mentorship with mostly males. And it might have just been that they were not good mentors, what I'm figuring out right now on this stage. But now that I'm thinking that through, but more than anything, I realized we were connectors. I had become a connector, and I'm working on not saying we, because it really was just me, and I'm gonna own that today. So, after finding this stat, I realized this really was the key that we were playing in our community. One of the greatest values of mentors is the ability to see ahead of what others cannot see and to help them navigate their course to a destination. And that's really the work that we were doing. That's by John C. Maxwell. I tried finding a quote by a woman that was that good, but I couldn't. But I did try, okay? So what I realized is that connection changes the outcome. It was about mentorship, but not in a traditional sense that I had experienced before. And I knew if female entrepreneurs and lifestyle entrepreneurs, which most females are, were up against the impossible, they didn't need less help, they needed more. And a lot of the programs that were set up to help these women, they didn't qualify for because they weren't scaling or tech. Sorry, those things are very important. And if you're doing that, I didn't say that to offend you. I just mean like that's the corporate culture, that's the push for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I just think it doesn't have to be. We have things that are in our heart. So when I set up local, I really thought what every entrepreneur helper thinks. They need coaching. So I actually included it in the package to sell at our shop. They just need coaching. They need help. What I quickly realized as the coaching sessions went unutilized is that business owners, especially female-owned businesses, didn't need one more thing to do. Imagine. They just needed convenient connections, proof that it could be done, and opportunities. They were driven enough to figure out the rest. And with that, we saw brick and mortars in our rural community grow. Growth, which was 90% female-owned and operated. Because I asked, they told me. Because they told me their dreams, I could connect them to opportunities so they could make them a reality. So, in basically September of 2022, and I say basically of September 2022 because I was just really determined to open by August because my landlord said I wouldn't be able to open by August, so we actually opened August 31st of 2022, but basically September. I opened Local, which is a gift shop that sourced goods from hyper-local brands, so 20-mile radius of our community, with the belief that if we engage those building in their businesses over time, we might inspire them to grow on our main street one day. In less than 2 years, I have helped over 40 rural entrepreneurs and inspired more main street growth than I ever expected. Thank you. So shortly after Caitlin came to me, she owned the mobile grooming salon, and said even if it was crazy, she wanted to do brick and mortar. She felt like it was necessary to build her business. And I'm happy to be standing here and reporting on behalf of her that a little under a year in business, she's hired 2 full-time staff. She is looking at adding a second brick and mortar location. And she's going to start a groomer training program, all of which she could have never done in her mobile grooming salon. Callie, right, go Caitlin! Callie with MC Inc. Screen Printing, who I met at her garage sale, would go from basement screen printing business she wasn't sure she was going to start to brick and mortar and booming in less than a year. We connected her to a brick and mortar opportunity after her basement was bursting at the seams. She's starting to hire, and she's already outgrowing her brick and mortar location. And small town Denver, which is a crew investment, a little bit different than the other two, but one of our customers had left from Local, went to get a drink at a shop in Waverly, about 10 miles from Denver. And she was going on and on about Denver, how cute it was, and that we really needed one of these drink shops there. The owner said, well, I'd love to be there, but who can tell what's for rent? And with that, she decided to connect them to me, and they just opened in 2024 of this year. We worked until we found them a spot. And when I say we, I mean me. I worked until I found them a spot. Yeah. So if you're counting, and you can, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. If you're counting, that's a 4 brick and mortar growth on a rural Main Street in under a year. Sorry, 2 years. In a community of 1,700, right? Pretty impressive. But those are just the ones that I had an active hand in. We've actually seen an 8 brick and mortar business increase since I opened the doors of Local in late 2022. And we're projected to be at 11 by the end of this year. So women are proving what's possible in rural Iowa and Iowa. So what I know from my experience growing up in lower middle class in a rural community is that an Iowan dreaming big dreams network of possibility looks different than, say, an Upper East Side New Yorker dreaming of the same thing. We know that. Now, there are a lot of differences, but I believe the biggest one is the network. I believe fixing not only social connectedness issues, but also Iowa's net worth issues, the key lies in collaboration. For a more specific example, if you wanted to publish a book in Iowa, the likelihood that you ran into a publisher here or at a coffee shop this morning is extremely low compared to that of an Upper East Side New Yorker. To create a new reality, we have to start building that powerful network here. And if it isn't a network that we can connect to in Iowa, there's a chance it might just need to be built. There's a better chance that it needs to be built by a woman. And because representation and mentorship matter, we must see and be able to connect to successful Iowans who are authors, artists, entrepreneurs, and creatives. Start proving what's possible, even if on paper it's not what's profitable. So this was the day I had been working for 4 years. When Rena said that she knew me when, this is what I was working on for 4 years. If not my whole life, I had been waiting to get this box of books that I wrote myself. This was it. I had a full box of books. The book I wrote was finally here. I should have been screaming it from the rooftops. Why wasn't I? I did what 80% of Americans want to do simply by wanting to write a book. I did what 15% of the 81 do just by actually starting my book. I did what 6% of the 81 did by making it to the halfway mark. And this day, I had made it to the 3% remaining by holding my finished book in hand. But I didn't feel happy. I didn't at all. I felt overwhelmed with the work that came next because the project had already been such a huge lift. So I project that the cost was around $5,500 of just my invested dollars to self-publish my own book. I worked with 17 plus independent contractors and different systems, and I got to know how to self-publish a book. And I do not recommend people don't chase their dreams, but I would recommend we do this one different, because it was a lot. So I spent 3+ project years, and that's being really modest. It took forever. And I sold 26 books, which got me about $600. Yay! You know, I was like, should I put that in there? Should I embarrass myself? But listen, yes, because this is a part of the progress, and this is a part of what people need to know. It's not easy, and we're making it far more difficult than it needs to be. So, on top of the fact that when I needed energy for this project more than ever, I had none left. But my book looked terrible. This is the book that was in this box. The photos were pixelated. And even though it looked fine on screen, which is your only option when you're editing and proofing your book, the words on the back were completely unreadable. So now, not only did I not feel energized to market my book the one time that it needed it the most, I felt like an idiot. And instead of feeling inspired, like every one of my 26 fans said I should feel, I felt defeated. And I let my book just be. And shortly after getting this box of books, I had launched local, so it just kind of was. And I hadn't thought about it at all until January 12th of 2023. I was meeting with Abby Gellner. She was one of the first people to commit to selling at local when I was covered in paint and just begging people to bring me their stuff that I'd figure out how to sell it. And she was a brand that was expanding rapidly with opportunities, but she just wasn't that energized with it. And who could blame her? I mean, when you're making custom t-shirts for every other person in your community, it's exhausting, right? One by one, custom t-shirts, not fun. So each meeting with her, I would kind of continue to press. I didn't know her that well. I had really only met her when she dropped off her box, but we kind of just kept meeting every month. What do you want? What is your dream? What's your end goal? And her response this day was finally different. If she could do anything, she would write. I responded, okay, well, what would you need to do that? I was kind of sort of in the business of making dreams come true at that point, so what did you need? And she said, I don't even know, like a publisher? I was sort of instantly triggered. I remembered the pain instantly of going through pitching my book and never hearing back, only to venture into the process of self-publishing alone. But I realized in that moment, a publishing company could do everything the shop had done for the brands that we had been working with. It could grant credibility and allow people to start small, which was far better than never doing the dream at all. And so I said, well, maybe we could do that. We could get around to running a publishing company. Oh, it doesn't seem too hard, which is usually how I venture into everything. And the next day, on January 13th, I received my rejection letter from the only publishing company I submitted my work to. And so the next day, I decided to start learning how to become a collaborative indie publishing company. Initially, we took 5 people through Do School Publish, which was a class that actively engaged writers in the process of writing, finishing with a 30-day sprint to write their first book. Of the 5 projects that we took on in the beginning, we ended up with 2 projects brought to publish. Abby's was one of those. After taking Abby through the most miserable part of self-publishing, which I gotta tell you, I really thought like, ooh, writing your book, I'm gonna have to like get a cabin and wander away and write this book. It's not that. That's actually easy. You should write the book. It's the next part, right? And it's the afterwork and the understanding of the systems that are required. And so we started collecting a list of local designers and illustrators that could help us. We established a woman-owned and operated printing partnership, and we started working on new books, providing connection to local talent versus complicated computer-ran contracts and systems, which completely eliminate your control of the final product. Whew. And most importantly, collaboration to see it through. And when you're talking about the work of your life, control in the final product, and help when everything goes wrong are what I believe to be 2 vital components to be in the 3% of people who finish their book. So, we know that more Iowans than ever are starting to stay. This means Iowa storytellers, for the first time, might be empowered to inspire new possibilities here. And I believe there is just kind of a cloud of impossibility that hangs around this entire state. And it desperately needs to be shifted if we're going to ask people to do their dreams here. We know that Iowans are staying, they're moving back, they're transferring in. Look at this fancy stat that the governor shared. So what's the problem? And I believe that I experienced the problem firsthand growing up in Dysart, Iowa. in Iowa, there's this passed down narrative to kids with this background and beyond that those who leave are special and those who stayed settled. Most towns in Iowa take ample time to tell the stories of the ones that got away. They made it, they were special, and if you're from a small town or any town in Iowa, you know who those people are. There are a couple of them, right? You know who their names are, you know every story about them. Unfortunately, those who stay just don't loom as large. The folklore of those who stayed is rarely as prominent. In the rural community that I live in, I constantly hear the deep sign-off, trade-off conversation. We moved back for the community, for the schools, for our kids, our family, and the values we were raised with. And we gave up on our big dreams and life. This is where the settle narrative lives on. The next generation hears that and feels that everywhere that they exist. We can create a new reality where staying is special and celebrated too. So, the landscape to stay has never been better. I know this is the stat we wanted, right? Like, no, doom and gloom in Iowa. Yeah, we know. But, it's good, right? So, especially if you aspire to be an entrepreneur or you aspire to enjoy life, it's the best time to do that. So Iowa was recently ranked as the #2 state in the country to build a business. Go Iowa. In fact, if you wanted to build a business in the rural community that I live in, and if you want to talk later, I got some opportunities for you. The average rent for a brick and mortar shop in the rural community that my shop is in is about $600 a month, meaning you could be closer to building your dream here than anywhere else in the country right now. And you don't have to listen to me just because I'm on the stage and I'm wearing a yellow shirt and I talk kind of fast and I'm a little weird. There are actually businesses that believe this already, right? We're seeing Amazon and Facebook scoop up land like never before. And if they see possibility here, maybe it's time we start. So in May, why is that doing that? That was exciting. I thought that I stopped all those animations. I didn't. In May of 2022, my husband and I were wandering the historical downtown of Breckenridge, Colorado. We found it to be quaint, artistic, original, and alive for how small it was. And we both started wishing at lunch that afternoon that our small town could look like this. And it sparked a thought. Although I knew we could never have mountains, although some of the quarries and trash mounds that we have in our state are pretty impressive, right? Like, we could fake it. I could really see, other than that, no reason that this couldn't exist where we lived. And when you mix the advantages of building a business here with the fact that the cost of living is 7% lower in Iowa than the rest of the United States, it all works out to a why not here, why not now scenario. So since I'm a little obsessive, I came home from that vacation and I got right to work. I continued to tell my story on my daily personal journal podcast, which I started at the beginning of my journey in April of 2019. Because I thought, if this all works out, one day I'll be standing on a stage and I'll be able to say, if you want to know how I did it, here you go. Here's every thought, every book, every moment that was meant to break me, all in this podcast from day one. I went on to finish publishing my book, which came out in August of 2022, and started working on my second book. And my books are actually based on each year of my podcast. I opened Local August 31st of 2022, started Local Pubco January of 2023, and launched a nonprofit focused on rural community development, local foundation, and established our first chapter, Destination Denver, in April of 2022. I continue speaking and facilitating and launched Do School in 2023, which is an immersive entrepreneur curriculum that is do-centric and led by local mentors. I say all this not to have you all sit there and say, wow, how does she do it all? I say it so you can see what can be done when you commit first to changing yourself, then your home, your community, and then one day, the world. So I wanted to leave you all with this quote because I found it and I thought it to be really amazing. This is the true joy in life, being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, being a force of nature. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it what I can. Dang it, I knew this one was gonna get me. Hold on, okay. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I've got a hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. Dreaming here and creating systems of collaboration that create strength in numbers, utilizing our networks that are small but can become mighty should we choose to build our own communities. Okay, bring it home. Let's go. So this whole talk is proof of a concept about what happens when women work fearlessly and what will happen when we stop letting what has always been get in the way of what could be. What am I asking you to do? First off, yeah, if you want to buy my books and listen to my podcast, go for it. I think that's great. It'll be helpful. I'll be up to like 28 fans after I leave here. I will literally be so happy. But I'm asking you, encouraging you, to turn your anger into action, to create systems of empowerment in Iowa, to put people over profit, even when the stats in majority tell you you can't. Let your heart lead. Be the example that needs to be, and be proof that it can exist here. I'm asking you to create a new reality right here. Choose yourself, your home, and your heart. And I believe when even more Iowa women choose that, and we already have the most amazing example of that, we will see that we have the power to change not only Iowa, but the world. Thank you. You want me to keep going? Yes, okay, we'll keep going. So I thought we'd kind of end with just talking about some of the dreams that are on your heart, because although I don't know that I can officially make your dreams a reality, I have learned a little bit about how to create systems that could possibly help that. So right now, we have our gift shop that helps bring businesses out of their basement to connect to their communities, and that has been a really powerful tool. Imagine an Etsy shop, but a brick and mortar, full of just people building businesses in their basement and their goods. We have the publishing company, which was basically like, just don't do this stuff by yourself, because it sucks, and I've been there, and I don't want anybody else to go through it if they don't have to. So I don't know. I know that it takes a lot of bravery to share your dreams. I had about 12 one-on-one meetings with Abby before she wanted to share hers with me, so I get it, but this is all about being fearless. So if you have a dream and you want to talk about it, let's go.
And we have a microphone.
And we got a mic, so let's really go. Come on.
Oh, it is. Hi. Yeah, so if you have questions, want to share a dream,
yeah,
we've got
questions,
a microphone.
Dreams.
Who wants? All right. I'm just curious, have you shared this model? Like, are you able to share that with other small towns or chambers or?
Yeah, so most of the entrepreneurship classes that I went through, they really over-prepared you for what was going to happen when your business completely failed. So I didn't actually make a plan for what would happen if my business worked. And so I didn't have a great track record, so like it made sense. But right now we're building out how to, it would be a partnership, not a franchise, but how to take this to other communities, and we're currently looking at our second community right now. So we're working on building the system so that it's handoffable. I think it's really important to be community-led. So yeah, I'm working to empower other women to do the work that I'm doing in their community, for sure. Other questions? Or dreams. I mean, give me a good dream. Just try me. I love a good dream. Oh, yeah, we got one over here. Woo!
Okay, so I got a couple of different dreams. So I am Spark Me Up Creations is what I currently started. I do candles and bookmarks and keychains, and eventually someday my hope and dream is to have a candle bar where people can come in and create their own candles and make it the way that they want to do. And on top of that, I have actually 2 books started. One's a thriller, one is a romance, and then I have 4 children's books that I would love to get published. So those are my dreams.
Okay, so yes. So I first want to say thank you for sharing that. That takes a lot of bravery. I also want to just give you permission to be as multi-missioned as possible, because a lot of people were like, niche in, like calm it down, Hannah, don't be too much. Like, I can't be less. Someone said that once, and I was like, yes. I can't be less yellow. I can't have less businesses. I can't stop myself. So keep going with that. It's a really good trait of an entrepreneur, just by the way, having a lot of ideas. Then on the candle company, like, just do it. You know, entrepreneurship really is only learned in the doing of it, which is what inspired Do School. It's like, you can sit in a class and learn everything all day, and you'll mostly be scared into not doing it, because to do it is to be insane, and it's a bad idea. Mostly it's a bad idea. You shouldn't do it, but you should do it. You know, like, it's the only way to do it. So just keep building on that idea. On the publishing side, we can talk. I don't like seeing people go through what I went through, and so we just work to make that handoff a little more collaborative and connect you with people who can help you bring it to life. So yeah, we can talk. Thank you for sharing the microphone. Yay. More dreams. Come on, one person did it, so now everyone. Oh yeah, look at these things. Let's go.
She's pushing me off a cliff, looking me in the eye and stuff. So I actually just shared with Lindsay this morning that I have this dream to, I don't know if it is in the form of a podcast or a vlog or whatever it is, but to just share from experience. I'll talk a little bit later, like coming from a very, very broken, awful, toxic home life to having an extremely healthy, happy marriage, and the things that I've learned in that marriage that can help other people. So like I said, I don't know what that looks like, but I'm thinking about it. The other thing is, I'm thinking retreats. I don't know. The other thing that I'm thinking, or that I want to share with you, is that I have a 13-year-old who has been writing books since she was 9, and I am telling you, this kid could be the next Stephen King. Not scary ones, but like her creativity is mind-blowing, and her art is amazing. So I would love to talk to you about getting her connected with you.
And on the podcast, like, I started my podcast first by just literally recording audio. So usually I'll say to people, just do with what you have. Initially I was like, no, I need to be a fancy podcaster. And I bought all this podcast equipment off Amazon. I'm like, ooh, look at this podcast package. And that was really great. But then I spent all the money that I was never going to make back on my podcast, because I wasn't great at making money off my podcast at that point. So I just say, like, you already have what you need. Anchor is a really great resource. It's a free podcasting platform that you can use. You can run it from your phone. You can buy a USB. I use a Blue microphone, and it can plug right into your computer. You could start your podcast tomorrow. I recommend that you start just doing it, talk it out. A lot of people sit and plan, and there might be a better way to do this. I'm just convinced you figure it out by just talking it out, writing it out, figuring it out. So I just recommend that you get started with as little as you possibly need, because you could start tomorrow and just go. I mean, you'll figure out, when I started in 2019, there wasn't actually a personal journal category. So it was just weird, right? Like, why are you recording every day? That's so weird. But then by 2021, there was finally a journal, a personal journal category. So I fit somewhere. But, you know, just going, talking, you find your voice, you find who you're supposed to be, sitting and thinking and wondering and planning. For the planners in the room, I'm sorry. It doesn't work when you're talking about this. You got to engage your heart, and you got to just start going. So, yeah, you can start. Permission. Okay, we have another one.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. So I have a question. I'm kind of at a crossroads because I have a brick and mortar on Main Street in Anamosa, but it's my biggest expense right now is my rent, and my lease is going to be up in a couple months, and so I'm just very like, I don't know if I should keep it, and I don't know if you have an answer for this without knowing much about my business or anything, but I don't know, you know, if I should try to keep going with it or if I should try to find different avenues. My husband is really glad that all of my stuff is out of the house.
I mean, yes.
So that's a big plus. But right now I don't staff my brick and mortar during the day because I also have a job and I have things to do. And so I just use it for my stuff and then for special events like music classes. I do sensory play and stuff for kids. So I use it for classes for kids and events and things like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, so in our community, and do you have other businesses in town, or is it just you? Because there's a chance that it's just you.
There are a few other businesses downtown, but everybody's kind of confused by what I'm doing.
That means you're doing it well, right?
Okay.
If you're confusing, you're just complex and awesome. That's what that means. Or you're a lot, and you can't be less. So do you have a chamber?
Yes.
You have a chamber. Are they a good chamber? No. Then that means no. Okay. If you don't know, then they're probably not doing what needs to be done. Okay. A great way to do that is to just like throw your own community event. It's a really great way to get in trouble very quickly. You might have, and I don't know, I don't want you to get in trouble, but I do want you to turn your anger into action. So you might have the president of the chamber call you and demand that you put their logo on everything so that they get recognized for your event because it was actually their event, but it's not, it's yours. So that happened. So I would say running a community event is a great way to get people through your door without having to be like, come through our door. They naturally will just gravitate to it. So we ran, when I was struggling, I think it was like late September, I was having to do reports for all of my vendors. And I'm like, if I don't start selling stuff, why would anyone sell their stuff here? So we threw a fall festival. I literally just grabbed like, Mom, you were an art teacher. You can paint faces. Stepdad, you have a hay rack. You can drive the hay rack thing. So it is a lot of extra work, but we got tons of traffic. That was our biggest day. And then we've continued to build events. That was sort of the establishment of the foundation, was like, okay, if the entities that are supposed to be drawing people to our businesses aren't doing that work actively enough to actually benefit us, then we're going to have to do it ourselves. And I didn't want to do it all myself, so we created the foundation. But community events are a great way to not have to like keep telling people this is what I am and this is what I'm about, to let them kind of exist in your space and around your space, and then naturally they'll kind of just come through your doors. So hopefully that helps a little. I know it's a heavy lift, but it has worked for us a lot. And then we just worked with other businesses a lot. Like, hey, I don't know, Sarah, who's here? Hey, Sarah. Sarah owns Wave of Life in Denver, yoga studio, which if you are ever in the area, which you never would be, but if you were, we got a lot of things. But I remember Sarah was about to open when we had the fall festival, and so she's like, I'll throw out a fire pit and get some s'mores. And so we kind of pulled off a very half-assed event, but it inspired the next round, and then got everybody involved, and it got people through our doors and more awareness. So, yeah. More dreams, or we're good. We're wrapping. Okay. Great. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you. This room, this space, this possibility is exactly what Iowa women need. We really do. We need more chances to spread the word about what we're doing, and I'm very thankful that the women in this room have continued to do this work, because it is not easy at all. So thank you, and thank you all.